Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, Adam Cruz, and I'm here with my fantastic co-host right here,
Eddie Nicholas. What a beautiful people. Welcome to 91.6 FM, the heartbeat of the beautiful country of Sudan.
Yes.
I'm here with my buddy Adam Cruz, and we're going to discuss what's going around with the world in news, music, and whatever else decides to pop up in our heads.
I know.
How are you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing fantastic now that I'm with you. Let us take a moment to let our viewers and our listeners know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here, not only giving you fantastic music, but we're here to be your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. As my brother Eddie said, we are live on Capital Radio, 91.6 FM, and on the web at dwopmusicradio.com. So last episode, we didn't have enough time. I want to apologize to our fans and followers, but we want to discuss it first out the gate. Let's talk about Mr. Lorenz Tate, the actor, who held this very interesting panel discussion locally here. We're in New Jersey for all our people out in Sudan. In the United States, we're in New Jersey here. And Lorenz Tate, the actor, made an appearance locally. Talk about what that was like and why did he make the appearance, first of all? Give some background.
Last week was the Newark International Film Festival down in Newark, New Jersey.
How many years have the film festival been happening?
This is his second year. If I'm not correct, I will definitely find out the answer. But anyway, it's the second year, and it was a fantastic evening. And a couple of days, it started Thursday, went from Thursday through Sunday.
Okay.
And Lorenz Tate was invited down along with his brother, the Tate brothers, and they were discussing a vehicle that they did called Brownsville.
Brownsville, okay.
And
like Brownsville, Brooklyn?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But you know, we have to do some background. But he was talking about a vehicle that he and his brothers did called Brownsville. And in doing that, the project started out in 2003.
Wow.
And in his discussion, he brought up the art of the independent filmmaker or the independent actor, independent anything, because this actually can be applied to anything that anybody does as an independent artist. This
especially for us in independent music. Yes,
this
it
happens
applies.
to be with film.
Yes.
He brought up the topic of Hollywood and how many of us try to get our stories to Hollywood, or in this case, in music, we try to get our music to those big record labels. Sure. That show as a relationship. But in so doing that, he basically said that nowadays, he said, as an independent person, you just have to be good at your craft. You have to believe in your stories. You have to believe in your work, and you have to put it out there to the universe. Because in putting it out there to the universe, you don't know who is going to be able to basically receive it.
Right.
And
okay.
In doing that, we look at those vehicles such as Netflix, I believe Spotify, YouTube, Hulu, all of Amazon Prime, all of these independent companies that are now popping up and producing movies, music, and I guess basically just good time entertainment. He started his project back in 2003.
Which was 14 years ago.
Yes.
Wow.
His project has now come into fruition.
Okay.
And basically what he said is, don't give up in believing in what you do.
Right.
To continue believing in what you do, to strike out and set forth and have your goals and your sights set.
Right.
If you have your goals and your sights set on what you want to achieve and you're steadfast, that in your mission of doing it, those individuals that you seek to find, they're going to come to you.
And I love that off camera we were talking about this very topic, and it sounds like he was also encouraging more independence. And when you do that, you'll be surprised at how many avenues are opened up for you in the independent market. I think, like in music, it sounds like Mr. Tate was discussing how there used to be this push towards, like you're saying, towards Hollywood. Let me get that big budget studio to back my film Brownsville. Let me get that huge outfit. But what happens now is the independent routes have gained prominence, and now they're more powerful than ever before. Why? Because when you are pushing the power all the way up to the top, there's only but few that make the decisions about whether your project gets green lit or red lit, meaning go or stop. So I really applaud Mr. Tate's overall argument that what we need to do is really push in terms of the independence market. So did he give you
and basically take control of what you're doing, because he said often we find ourselves where we are picked by whomever, whether it be record label, film label. We end up owing our souls to the money providers.
You need to say that again, because that is so applicable to the music game right now. Say that one more time, please.
We end up owing our souls to the money givers.
Right. So if you want to go to the top, like the Hollywoods, or in our case, the big three labels, we always say the big three are Sony, Universal Music Group, and Warner, right? And so if your aspirations is to get signed by a major label, you have to realize there's an element of
give and take, and not only give and take, but give and take. You give up a lot. You basically give up your soul in order to get that project out.
And there is a intimation that if you're independent minded, you have more control and you are less apt to sell your soul in that sense. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about more of this music game right here on the Freedom Radio Hour.
91.6 FM, y'all.
Yeah, dwmusicradio.com.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people, and welcome back. I'm Eddie Nicholas, and I'm here with my fantastic co-host, the one and only Mr.
Adam Cruz, and you're live and direct right here on Capital Radio 91.6 FM and on the web at dwmusicradio.com. You're deep in the zone right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. Before we broke, we were talking about the power of independent thought. Independent means for getting your project out. There used to be this thought that you needed to sign to a major label, or in the case of Lorenz Tate's panel discussion that Eddie discussed in our last break, he was talking about there used to be a propensity towards aspiring towards Hollywood, that big budget studio backing. But now things have changed, and it's changed all the way around. Speaking of change, I want to talk for a second about politics.
Or politics.
Well, listen.
Either one, but we got politics or politics. We're going to talk about politics.
You're so funny. What I want to talk about is at a recent interview that was given by rapper Mos Def. You know, he changed his name to Yasin Bey. And he has lived in
So he had some type of epiphany,
something. He lives in South Africa now, and he's dealt with some back and forth in terms of his status. But he really had some interesting things to say at a recent hip-hop interview.
But wait a minute. For those people that, like me, I don't really follow hip-hop, but he played in Fifth Element.
Yes, he well, I know.
We want to make sure people get the gist of who he is.
But I love Mos Def for his work with Black Star, his work as an independent artist. He's also a well-known actor, and he's done a lot of politically minded music, which lent us to this topic. In a recent interview, he discussed his issue with the hip-hop community. He argues that hip-hop at one time used to be a hip-hop MC, that is, the rapper, used to be the equivalent of the urban news reporter. See, back in the heyday of hip-hop, in its early days, if you will, it was considered a sense of journalism. It was sort of a journalistic endeavor. So if you have songs like The Breaks or The Message, where they were talking about extreme poverty in their community, they were talking about drugs, violence, crime, all kinds of things, that they were basically shining a light on a lot of the problems that plagued our community, our urban communities specifically. But what Mos Def, Yasin Bey, is arguing is that we no longer do that in hip-hop. And a lot of the hip-hop, first of all, he argues that there's an oversaturation in hip-hop. There are a million rappers that are coming out with new mixtapes and new releases. So to him, his argument is, I'm a human being trying to do the best I can in this world. I don't have time to listen to all the music that's coming out in hip hop. And in addition, when I do have the time, he argues that when I listen, I always ask myself, what did I get at the end of listening to that? What kind of benefit did I get from listening to that? He's saying there's a lot of time where this hip hop music is more party driven, more superficial in the topics that they discuss. And he said where there used to be this propensity towards politically minded music. So he's always trying to school the younger generation because, you know, he's now considered the elder statesman in hip hop. And he asked them, what are you getting from the music that you're hearing, the playlist that you create to listen to hip hop today? How is that helping you to become more conscious about the community around you? So that started a discussion in my mind about what we're doing in house music to create more political awareness. I want to give a very special shout out to Mr. Josh Milan of Honeycomb Music. In full disclosure, I run Honeycomb Music, the label, along with Mr. Milan. But I do want to shout him out and say I applaud his efforts in terms of trying to cover these kinds of topics. His latest album, entitled 6969, his birthday, he really talks about the struggles of being a black man in America. He discusses Trump, our current president. He discusses anger and how anger is fueled or not, depending on what's going on in our lives, especially now with our political climate. So it turns me to you, Mr. Nicholas, because you are a recording artist with a massive catalog. Do you feel that you're being politically minded enough in your music when you're writing lyrics? Do you think that you're being political enough? And also, after you answer that, I want to find out, do you think that you ought to be politically minded in your material? In other words, a lot of your music is positive. It talks about optimism, overcoming adversity. But do you think that you ought to be covering politically minded music in your when you write music?
Well, when you ponder that question, you have to really look at how things affect you in your environment, you know, what you see on the news, your dealings with people on a day-to-day basis, because those are where you get your concepts and your stories from.
Sure.
That you want to talk about or tell about. Politically directly, my music does not address those things of becoming politically involved.
Do you think you should?
It depends.
It depends on what?
It depends on the circumstance and how I'm feeling about a situation. If there's a situation that is heavy on my heart, that involves something that has happened in my environment that affects my community, then by all means, I want to be able to see where I can go and what I can come up with that will generate conversation. Not so much a change, but conversation, because you first have to start with a conversation, and from a conversation you can move on to how are we going to change things.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to ponder the second part of the question, which was, do you think that you ought to? You have this brand where you're building lyrics around optimism and positivity, but do you think that you should transition into more politically minded music considering our current climate? And then we're going to talk about community outreach in house music. Let's talk about it right here on the Freedom Radio Hour.
91.6 FM, y'all. Be right back.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, and on the web at dwildmusicradio.com. I'm here with my fantastic co-host,
Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people, and welcome back to 91.6 FM.
Yes.
We are so glad that you're back. DSWildmusicradio.com.
Okay.
DSWildmusicradio.com.
Yes,
See, I got it right.
You're deep in the zone right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music business news and trends from around the globe. Let's jump right to it. I wanted to ask you the second part of that question. First, we were talking about, before we broke, about Eddie's lyrical content in his music. The question was, do you think that you're politically minded enough in your lyrics? Now we want to ask Eddie here, do you think that you ought to? In other words, we realize that when you listen to Eddie's music and the lyrics, it's more about optimism, overcoming adversity, reaching your full potential in life, all important topics, and they're personal in nature to Eddie and to myself because we co-write a lot. But beyond that, do you think that you ought to be politically minded in your music? In other words, do you think you should transition now into covering topics like Trump and the wage gap inequality, the gender gap, the inequality around discrimination and race and all that. Do you think you should be talking about that in your lyrics?
Well, it's a catch. What is it, 42?
22.
22, 42,
Yes.
42, whatever those numbers are. You know, because it all depends. Again, it comes back to one's feelings. It comes to one's dealing with those things you're talking about. How does Trump's presidency affect me?
Right.
How does it affect my livelihood? How do changes in the economy affect me? How do they affect people around me? How do they affect the families around me? Those things, if one thinks hard enough, they all can be a song.
Right.
I do have a song that I have not recorded yet called A State of Confusion.
Right.
You know, the world is going in a state of confusion, politics and all of that type of stuff, but I haven't recorded it yet.
Right.
Because a lot of my music, as well as others, centers around love, being able to pursue forward, relationship breakups, and how you go through those things.
Sure.
And again, politically, do I want to? Yes, and I'm quite sure that we will come up with one.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's almost all over. We will come up with one. But at the same token, right now, honestly, it's not at the top of my agenda.
Right.
But I do relate to songs like Jamiroquai, that song he did. The world's in a state of what's it?
We're too young to die.
What's the song again?
Okay.
Y'all know we're talking about Jamiroquai.
Yes. Yeah, but no, I recognize that he and others, like I was saying earlier about Josh Milan, have really covered the political topics.
And Porter.
Yes, Gregory Porter.
1960 what?
Yes.
1960 who?
1960 what?
That's a history lesson.
Right
if
there.
anybody really listens to that song,
Right.
that is a history lesson talking about the killing of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Right.
While we're down there jumping and hooping and carrying on the floor, there's a heavy message up in that song if people choose to listen to
Well, that leads us to our next community. My quick thought about what you're saying, though, I'm also a recording artist. I have lots of music out there, and most of the music that I write is personal in nature. I had issues growing up in a fundamental Christian home, and I write about that in a record called Jam.
And again, your environment.
Yes, so I tend to agree with you that oftentimes when we write as recording artists, we're writing as a snapshot of what we're going through at the time. So maybe we don't feel compelled to write about Trump or the other political issues in our country at the moment because maybe we had a personal affliction or some sort of adversity that we're writing out to heal ourselves. You see, like Eddie here, I write and release music not to blow up or to become popular. I write music and release music because I want to heal myself from an ailment.
And you got to get it out.
Yes,
it's
you gotta
getting it
express
out.
it.
It's therapeutic when you're able to come up with something and then to be able to release it.
Right. Yes, and we have even a fan and follower of the show, Twice Don. I want to shout you out because he has political adversity that he's working through, and he's choosing to write poetry and some lyrics, and so I think that's part of the healing process. But I think one thing that we're not discussing enough is community outreach. You see, here in New Jersey, we have the fortune of having lots of different events, free and for pay, where you could come and attend house music events here in the state. Thousands of people, hundreds of people attend these events, and we often do not see community-minded initiatives. What I'm talking about are voter registration tables. I'm talking about community relief projects like our devastating hurricane season that's plaguing the U.S. and the Caribbean islands.
Domestic violence.
All suicide prevention, all of those things I think are important things to talk about while you're partying. You see, I think if I'm honest with myself, a lot of the events that we attend in New Jersey, while they're wonderful and it's a wonderful opportunity to congregate, there isn't enough of a community outreach. In other words, when I go to these events, I don't see a voter registration table. I don't see the hurricane relief station if you wish to donate canned goods or clothing to those that have survived the hurricane. And I think we're missing it by partying without a purpose. What are your feelings about that?
Well, I can honestly say that the number of functions that I have been with have addressed those very things that you're talking about.
So is it about attending the kind of events that support that? Or is it more of a general conversation that we're not doing enough?
I think it's more of a general conversation that people, when in their planning, are not looking at how we can reach a community beyond the house community.
Right. I think that's really valid.
Because when we're talking about community, and especially when we're doing parties in specific communities like East Orange, Montclair, Newark, Orange, these festivals are implicative of the areas of the towns that they represent. And those parties are not being done for house heads. Those parties are being done for the community at large. So therefore, when you're doing that, the community at large, you think about including the nonprofits.
Sure.
You think about including the vendors that are going to come in and provide services that are beneficial to people. You think about how can we serve the homeless? How can we get clothing? How can we get water? And, you know, just things that some of us just take normally for granted. How do we incorporate those things in our festivals, in our functions, and still make sure that people are provided with a good time? But we also want people to think consciously of what to do. This year I did the Orange Music Festival with Tanya Veltz and her husband. Shout out to Treehouse Entertainment. This year they had, I hope I'm getting it right, Marigold's Angels.
Huh.
Who, what they do is that they go to places like Trader Joe's or Whole Foods, and they are able to pick up food. And they bring that food, donated food, and they bring that food to those communities for the senior citizens, for the disabled, and others that normally have an issue with going out to get fresh produce. For instance, my hometown of Montclair, a certain section of us, we no longer have access to basically a supermarket. So in order to go shopping, we have to go further out. So again, when we did one of our festivals, the Jazz Festival, we were fortunate enough to have an individual come and bring fresh produce to one of these festivals.
That's great.
And given away for free. Given away for gratis.
Well, I want to say this. That's all the time we have for today. But I want to, if I were to do anything in terms of a call to action, I'd say if you're a recording artist, definitely consider incorporating more politically minded topics in your music. You don't have to. If that's not your brand, don't do that. But if you're willing to broaden your horizon, so to speak, consider incorporating more politically minded topics, because I think that in a sense we're hurting. Whether you're for or against our current administration, we are severely impacted by what's going on around the globe, and it behooves us as artists. I charge us with having the responsibility to open the eyes of our listeners by incorporating more politically minded material in your music. And the second thing is, I want to talk about community outreach. So if you have not registered to vote, please register to vote. If you're in the US, you can go to rockthevote.com. Follow the prompts for registering to vote. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. And you can do that in New Jersey. October 17th is the deadline for the upcoming November 7th election. But regardless of the state you live in, take a moment and register to vote. I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, you didn't cut me off at all. I was just getting ready to say, you know, just to all of you, when Adam was talking about your lyrics and your content of what you do in your music, not only that, get yourself involved. Get yourself physically and actively involved in specifically your community.
Sure.
You can become part of serving senior citizens, which is what I do. But you can also work with the youth. You know, we talk about our music. We talking about, you know, hearing about DJs doing things as bringing young people in and having them do DJ lessons, learning how to mix in, all of those type of things. Get yourself involved in the community. We talk about bringing in the young people. That's the only way we're going to be able to do it, is to be able to go out here and show these young people that we are interested in what they are doing. But hey, I'm here to help you to get to whatever your next level.
And I happen to work very heavily involved with after school programs in the state. So if you too want to get involved, search your state's after school network and get involved. Volunteer your services to help kids in the after school hours, because they need a lot of help. Thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely check out EddieNicholas.com, DJAdamCruz.com, and leave a comment under everything we're talking at FreedomRadioHour.com, or search us out on YouTube. We have our own channel, y'all. Have a great weekend and a great week ahead. I'll see you guys next time.
Peace and love. 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, and also on
DWildMusicRadio.com. Peace.
See, I ain't gonna say it again because I may twist it up. Love you, Deuce.
There you go.